See, he just fucked it all up. Good boy. Give me that. Good boy. Yeah. Good boy.
The internet froze the second Chrisean Rock opened her mouth because this wasn't another late-night rant, another cryptic caption, or another emotional meltdown caught on shaky phone footage. This felt different, like when a celebrity accidentally says too much and immediately realizes the lawyers are already sprinting toward the phone. For weeks, fans had been whispering, theorizing, zooming in on videos frame by frame like it was the Zapruder film, asking the same uncomfortable question everyone was scared to say out loud. What is really going on with Chrisean Jr.? And just when people thought this story had peaked, Chrisean didn't just crack the door open. She kicked it off the hinges and let the truth stumble into the light like it had been hiding in the shadows. This whole time, the reaction was instant chaos. Comment sections exploded, timelines caught fire, and suddenly everyone from armchair doctors to certified keyboard psychologists had an opinion. This wasn't just a reveal. This was the kind of confession that makes the Kardashians look boring and reality TV feel scripted. Because once you hear what was said, once you connect the dots, you realize this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't the internet being dramatic. This was a secret sitting in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally admit it. And when that admission came, it changed everything. For months, Chrisean Rock had been living inside a storm she pretended wasn't there, smiling through Instagram lives while the internet circled like sharks that smelled blood but hadn't spotted it yet. Every post felt normal on the surface, but the comments underneath told a different story, the kind that doesn't go away just because you disable replies. People weren't just watching anymore. They were studying, screenshots, slowed down, clips, side-by-side comparisons, all stacked like evidence boards in a Netflix true crime documentary that hadn't officially dropped yet. And right at the center of it all was one question nobody could ignore. What was really going on with Chrisean Jr.? At first, the concern came wrapped in politeness, the way fans tried to sound respectful before things get ugly. People asked if the baby was okay, if he had been checked, if everything was normal. But the tone shifted fast. Curiosity turned into suspicion. Suspicion mutated into accusations. And suddenly everyone online had a medical degree they earned. From scrolling at 3 a.m. every new clip added fuel, because something about the footage felt unsettling in a way that was hard to explain but impossible to ignore. The internet doesn't need certainty, it just needs vibes, and the vibes were screaming. Chrisean's reaction didn't calm anything down. If anything, it made people lean in closer. She laughed some questions off, snapped at others, and brushed concerns aside with a confidence that felt performative. It was the kind of confidence you put on when you're trying to convince yourself more than anyone else. Critics called it denial. Supporters called it a mother protecting her child. Neutral observers just grabbed popcorn because this was turning into one of those slow burn scandals where the truth always leaks, no matter how hard someone tries to duct tape it shut. Then came the contradictions. One day, everything was fine. The next day, something sounded off. Stories shifted slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough for people who live online to notice. And once the internet smells inconsistency, it never lets go. It starts pulling threads, comparing old statements to new ones, replaying audio, clips like DJs remixing reality. Suddenly, people weren't just asking questions, they were building timelines. The pressure mounted quietly at first. Blogs started hinting without fully accusing. Commentary channels spoke in hypotheticals, using phrases like allegedly, and some fans believe the digital equivalent of saying I'm not saying it, but I'm definitely saying it. Chrisean's name began trending for reasons that had nothing to do with music, fights, or relationship chaos. This time, it was different. This time, it felt heavier. What made it worse was the optics. Every time Chrisean appeared unbothered, critics saw a responsibility. Every time she got emotional, they saw guilt. There was no winning this game. Because the rules were written by an audience that already decided something wasn't right. And when the internet decides that, it doesn't wait for facts, it demands confessions. Behind the scenes, things were clearly spiraling. Lives got shorter. Posts became defensive. Subtle jabs at haters turned into full-blown rants about people needing to mind their business. But when your life is public currency, mind your business sounds less like a boundary and more like a red flag. Especially when the business involves a child everyone feels emotionally invested in. Then came the whispers about doctors, appointments, and things the public doesn't know. Those words alone were enough to send the rumor mill into overdrive. Because if there was nothing to hide, why even hint at hidden information? The internet doesn't hear reassurance, it hears mystery. And mystery is a click-generating machine. Chrisean started framing herself as misunderstood, a familiar move in celebrity scandals. She suggested people were twisting narratives, exaggerating moments, and turning concern into attacks, and to be fair, the internet does that. But the problem was timing. These defenses came after weeks of silence, after enough footage had stacked up to make people feel like they weren't imagining things. It felt less like clarity and more like damage control. As the conversation grew louder, so did the stakes. Parenting choices became public debate. Strangers argued over what they would do if that were my child, as if hypothetical morality paid bills. The line between concern and judgment blurred. And suddenly everyone was fighting, not about facts, but about who had the right to speak at all. Meanwhile, Chrisean Jr. remained the silent center of the storm. A child turned into a symbol for internet outrage. The turning point came when Chrisean teased that she had her truth and that people would see. Soon, that single phrase detonated like a grenade, because in internet language, my truth doesn't mean nothing happened. It means something happened, and you're about to hear a version of it. Reaction channels started warming up their microphones, commentators sharpened their sarcasm. Fans braced themselves for either vindication or devastation. What nobody expected was how heavy the reveal would feel once it started coming together. Because this wasn't shaping up to be a simple misunderstanding or a case of overblown internet drama. The pieces people had been speculating about began to align in ways that were deeply uncomfortable. And suddenly, the jokes slowed down. The memes felt inappropriate. The sarcasm hit a wall. Chrisean had spent weeks trying to outrun the narrative. But the narrative caught up anyway, jogging casually, not even out of breath. The silence she thought was protecting her had only amplified the noise. Every ignored question turned into a headline. Every defensive response became a clip. And every attempt to brush it off made people more certain that something real was being buried under bravado. By the time she finally decided to speak, the audience wasn't just listening. They were waiting, arms crossed, receipts ready, emotionally exhausted from the buildup. This wasn't going to be a casual clarification. This was shaping up to be a confession moment, whether she intended it that way or not. And when the silence finally broke, it didn't sound like relief. It sounded like the beginning of something much bigger, something that would pull in doctors, critics, fans, and enemies alike. Because once you open the door to medical truth, you can't close it again. You can't unring that bell. And Chrisean was about to learn that the internet never forgets, especially when it believes it was right all along. The moment Chrisean Rock finally started talking, the internet didn't lean in gently. It pounced. This wasn't a listen with empathy situation. This was a full-blown digital courtroom where everyone suddenly became judge, jury, and loudest person in the comments. Clips of her statements spread faster than facts ever could. Chopped, slowed down, captioned with bold words and dramatic music like the trailer for a scandal nobody asked for but everyone was addicted to. And just like that, the narrative mutated. Again, because the internet never reacts to what you say, only to how it makes them feel. Reaction channels went into overdrive. You could practically hear microphones clicking on across the globe. Some creators framed it like a heartbreaking confession. Others treated it like a smoking gun. A few didn't even pretend to care about the truth. They smelled engagement and went straight for the jugular. Every sentence Chrisean uttered was dissected like it was part of a leaked deposition. People argued over tone, timing, word choice, and facial expressions, as if body language analysis was suddenly an Olympic sport. Celebrities started chiming in too. Which is when things officially left the realm of concern and entered the circus. Some posted vague praying hands emojis that managed to say everything and nothing at the same time. Others liked comments they probably shouldn't have, sending fans into investigative spirals over a single double tap. It was giving high school subtweets, except with millions of followers and zero accountability. And the messier it got, the more attention it pulled. Memes, of course, weren't far behind. Because nothing says the internet is uncomfortable. Like turning a serious situation into humor to cope, screenshots were turned into reaction images, quotes were slapped onto viral templates. People laughed, then immediately argued about whether laughing was inappropriate, which somehow made the meme spread even faster. It was chaos with Wi-Fi, and nobody was logging off. Meanwhile, the outrage evolved. What started as concern became accusation. What started as accusation became condemnation. Suddenly, everyone had a strong opinion on parenting, healthcare, responsibility, and accountability, all formed in under 30 seconds. The phrase "this is deeper than we thought" echoed across platforms like a prophecy people wanted confirmed. And with every repost, the story grew teeth. Chrisean tried to clarify, but clarification on the internet is like pouring water on a grease fire. Every attempt to explain was interpreted as backtracking. Every emotional moment was framed as guilt. Even silence was weaponized. If she spoke, she was lying. If she didn't, she was hiding something. It was a lose-lose scenario built entirely by public perception, not evidence. Then came the alleged insiders. You know the type. I know someone who knows someone. I work in healthcare. I can't say too much, but trust me, these comments spread like urban legends, each one more dramatic than the last. None of them were verifiable, but that never stopped anyone. The internet doesn't require credentials. It just requires confidence and a profile picture that looks believable enough. The conversation took a darker turn when people began reframing the story as a morality tale. This wasn't just about health anymore. It became about character, about whether Chrisean was fit, responsible, aware, or capable. And once the internet starts debating someone's worth as a parent, the empathy evaporates completely. It becomes sport. Points are scored with hot takes, not compassion. Even Blueface's name started popping back into the mix, because of course, it did. You can't have a Chrisean narrative without dragging that saga back onto the stage. People speculated about what he knew, when he knew it, and why he wasn't speaking. His silence became its own subplot, treated like a suspicious pause in a movie soundtrack right before the jump scare. Everyone waited for him to say something reckless enough to make it worse. Public opinion split into camps. One side defended Chrisean fiercely, arguing that the internet had crossed every boundary imaginable. They called it exploitation, hypocrisy, and the way people pretend to care while feeding off trauma for clicks. The other side felt vindicated, convinced this was proof that their concerns were justified all along. Both sides talked past each other, yelling into the same digital void, and neither one was listening. What made it even messier was how fast misinformation traveled. A single misinterpreted phrase turned into headlines. A clipped sentence became a confirmation. Context was optional. Accuracy was negotiable. And by the time correction surfaced, the damage was already done. Because lies sprint and truth strolls. Stopping occasionally to tie its shoes, brands stayed quiet. Networks avoided touching it. This wasn't the kind of controversy you slap ads on comfortably. It was too raw, too messy, too unpredictable. And that silence from corporate spaces only reinforced the feeling that something serious was unfolding, something people didn't want to officially associate with but couldn't stop watching. Chrisean's emotional state became content. Tears were analyzed, Frustration was mocked, vulnerability was turned into thumbnails with red arrows and shocked emojis. The humanity of the situation got buried under engagement metrics. Because empathy doesn't trend as well as outrage. And yet, the more people consumed it, the more unsettled they felt. Like laughing during a moment you know you shouldn't die by this point. The story had outgrown Chrisean's control entirely. It didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to the internet, which had remixed it into something louder, uglier, and more profitable. The original truth, whatever it fully was, sat somewhere in the middle, drowned out by speculation and noise. And just when it seemed like the discourse couldn't escalate any further, it did. Because consequences were coming into focus. Real ones, the kind that don't disappear after the trend cycle moves on. Reputations were shifting, public sympathy was hardening. And people started realizing this wasn't just another viral meltdown. This was going to leave marks. The jokes flowed. The memes felt forced. The outrage lingered. And beneath all of it, one uncomfortable realization started to sink in. This story wasn't over. It was only changing shape, and whatever came next was going to hit harder, cut deeper, and force everyone watching to confront how far things had already gone. Once the dust settled, or at least pretended to, it became painfully clear that this wasn't the kind of story you scroll past and forget by the next morning. This was the kind that stains timelines, relationships, and reputations long after the trending tab moves on. Chrisean Rock didn't just break her silence, she shattered an illusion. And when illusions break, everyone has to confront what they were choosing not to see. Public perception shifted in real time. Support didn't disappear, but it changed shape. The loud, ride-or-die cheering turned quieter, more cautious. Like people suddenly realized that this wasn't entertainment anymore. Critics, on the other hand, felt validated. They spoke with the confidence of people who believed the ending finally proved their theories correct. But validation on the internet doesn't come with resolution. It just fuels the next argument. The fallout hit on multiple levels at once. Chrisean's image, already complicated, took on a heavier weight. She wasn't just a viral personality anymore. She became a symbol of a much bigger conversation about fame, motherhood, and what happens when private struggles play out in public spaces. Every past clip was reinterpreted. Every old interview was replayed with new meaning. The internet doesn't give you the benefit of growth when it can give you the burden of hindsight instead. Relationships around her felt the impact too. Friends went quiet. Associates stopped posting together. The absence of people who used to be loud supporters spoke volumes. Silence, once again, became its own statement. And in a culture obsessed with loyalty, disappearing from someone's digital orbit is often louder than public condemnation. It looked less like abandonment and more like self-preservation. Blueface's shadow loomed heavier than ever, even without him saying much. His lack of commentary turned into speculation, and speculation turned into narrative. People debated his role, his responsibility, and his silence as if it were intentional strategy. Whether fair or not, the internet assigned meaning anyway. In these stories, no one gets to be neutral. You're either part of the problem or part of the conspiracy. The commentary ecosystem adjusted fast. Channels that once joked their way through drama slowed their tone. Some pivoted towards serious discussions, while others doubled down, milking the situation for every possible click. The divide was obvious. One side tried to look responsible. The other leaned into spectacle, and the audience, as always, rewarded whichever version made them feel something stronger. What lingered most was discomfort. People didn't feel entertained anymore. They felt implicated. There's a strange moment in every viral scandal when viewers realize they've been consuming something deeply personal as content, and that realization doesn't sit well. It's like laughing at a joke and suddenly understanding it was about someone's real pain. The reaction isn't outrage, it's awkward silence. Chrisean herself appeared changed. Not dramatically transformed, not magically healed. but altered in subtle ways that people who watch closely could sense. The bravado felt thinner, the defensiveness seemed exhausted. It was the posture of someone who had run out of places to hide, even behind confidence. And that vulnerability, whether intentional or not, made the situation harder to digest, not easier. The internet moved on, as it always does, but not completely. This story stayed parked in the background, resurfacing every time Chrisean posted. Every time her name trended for unrelated reasons, it became part of her digital footprint, something that followed her into every new chapter, whether she wanted it there or not. Viral moments fade. Viral labels stick. What made the aftermath especially unsettling was the lack of closure. There was no clean ending, no definitive resolution that satisfied everyone. Just fragments of truth, layered with opinion, buried under commentary. People wanted certainty. But certainty isn't always available, especially when real lives collide. With public curiosity, the internet doesn't handle ambiguity well. It demands conclusions even when none exist. In the end, this wasn't just about Chrisean Rock or even about Chrisean Jr. It became a mirror held up to the audience itself. A reminder of how quickly concern turns into consumption, how empathy erodes under engagement, and how easily serious moments get flattened into content. The scandal didn't just expose a situation. It exposed a system that thrives on watching situations unfold in real time. And that's the part nobody likes to talk about. Because once you realize you're part of the machine, it's harder to pretend you're just an observer. The story leaves you with questions that don't have punchline answers. Questions about boundaries, responsibility, and what happens when the internet decides it deserves access to everything. One thing is certain, though. This reveal changed the trajectory of Chrisean Rock's public narrative forever. There's no rewinding past this chapter, no rebranding big enough to erase it. The internet may move on, but it never truly forgets. It just waits. It just waits. And as the noise fades and the next scandal loads into the timeline, this one lingers quietly in the background, unresolved, uncomfortable, and unforgettable. Because some stories don't explode and disappear, they smolder. And this is exactly why you can't look away. Because stories like this don't just end when the video cuts off. They mutate, they resurface, they come back louder, messier, and somehow even more unbelievable than before. Today it's a medical truth. Tomorrow it's leaked messages, deleted posts, or someone finally saying the quiet part out loud. At the worst possible moment, this saga isn't over. It's just catching its breath. So if you made it this far, don't sit there quietly pretending you don't have an opinion. I already know you do. Drop it in the comments right now. Was the internet right to question everything? Or did it cross a line that can't be uncrossed? Was this honesty, damage control, or something in between? Say it with your chest, because the comment section is where the real fights break out. And smash that like button like it owes you money. Because every single like tells the algorithm you want the truth served raw, unfiltered, and without PR training wheels. If you're still watching and you're not subscribed yet, that's wild behavior. Hit subscribe before the next bombshell drops and you have to pretend you heard about it somewhere. Because over here, scandals don't get buried, they get dissected, receipts get read, silence gets translated, and nothing stays hidden for long. New chaos, new leaks. New jaw-dropping moments are always loading, and you don't want to be late. When the timeline catches fire again, this isn't just commentary. This is a front row seat to celebrity implosions in real time. Stay locked in, stay curious, stay reckless in the comments. Welcome to Celeb Insanity, where the truth never stays quiet and the internet always tells on itself.